All right, folks, it's Thursday. It's 9 p.m. over here in the sunny UK. So that means it's time for Jungle Drums. And I say we because it's just me and Gimboy this evening. We had our third person was unfortunately unable to join us this evening, so I'll just type that in. That's for him because he knows what that means, and he said he was going to be watching the VOD tomorrow anyway. So I just did that there for him. Gim, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing all. Got a mouthful of crumble, but talk.
Oh, not bad, not bad. I think your sensitive. You think Discord's done that thing to you again, where it's adjusted your sensitivity. I think it's cutting you out just a little bit, as it likes to do occasionally.
Oh, hang on, I know what the problem is.
Right, so we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got quite a bit of news this week. I was looking, I was trying to find some decent articles and kind of browsing around, and so there was one that quite interested me, and this was from Tech Radar, and this is concerning a company called LiquidSky. Right now, if you haven't heard of LiquidSky, well, basically, they have been around, but it was only really at CES this year where they made, their announcement, which is talking about, cloud computing, so to speak. You may have heard of NVIDIA's thing that they had came up with, this concept where, say you don't have an awesome PC at home, but you want to be able to play games. Well, they were going to introduce this kind of streaming technique where basically a computer remotely, at a server farm or whatever, is playing the game, and then it's streaming it to your home PC. So your PC isn't actually doing any of the hard work, it's just streaming it, but yet you can, control it. A lot of us out there are quite familiar with in-home streaming, right? Things like Steam Link, streaming via the Xbox app, something that you use quite often, Gim. Something that I used to use quite a bit. And of course, we've all heard of streaming when it comes to, streaming broadcasts like this, when it comes to streaming Netflix and whatnot. But this whole kind of concept of being able to access a digital computer is really, really quite neat and groundbreaking. The biggest thing about LiquidSky, where it kind of sets itself apart from NVIDIA's GeForce Now, is basically with GeForce Now, it's $25. I'm not sure what the rates are over here. For about 20 hours of gameplay or so. Whereas LiquidSky, they're coming out with a freemium model where you can access their service absolutely free, but it will have ads, right? You end up accruing points by watching advertisements, and then you can spend those points on playing games at the cost of 1 credit per minute. So that's an interesting model. They do also have a pay-as-you-go type of plan for about $4.99 a month, and then a monthly plan for $9.99. But it seems like even those subscription-based rates they're talking about, they're still giving you credits to then, use those credits, so to speak. So it's not like you have this unlimited access for that $9.99 a month. It's just giving you about 2,400 credits that you can then use. So it's a bit of a different take on this whole kind of remote streaming concept. But when looking at their tech, it really sounds quite interesting. They've got different performance packages. If I pull this up real quick, I know it's a bit small, but they've got different rates depending on the type of experience you want. 60 Sky credits an hour here for the gamer package. So that's kind of like your entry level, or the elite, the 8 gigs of GPU video RAM for the lofty rate of 240 Sky credits an hour. You've got to keep in mind that this type of remote streaming, this cloud computing, so to speak, isn't just about gamers. Think about it. If you're some kind of, a product developer, you need access to, commercial type software this is a solution for you as well. I mean, some of these things like CAD and whatnot require really, really lofty, servers or workstation grade hardware that most home users don't have. So it's quite interesting. LiquidSky, they're saying they've got 13 data centers around the world. All of these data centers basically create virtualized gaming PC hardware. Nice.
Oh, I thought I was unmuted.
Whereas you, the user, all you need to do, you could have a laptop with integrated graphics on it, and you'd still be able to be playing AAA brand new titles at 60 frames per second. And it's really quite interesting. The downside, I suppose, is for the absolute best experience, you're going to have good internet. They're saying that, look, I say good. The speeds don't seem that bad, but after hearing some horror stories from people with what, their speeds are on their lines, it might not be accessible to some folk. I mean, they're saying that, look, you want to have at least a 20 megabit per second download speed. And also they're recommending if you're going to do this on Wi-Fi, you need to be on the 5 gigahertz band for those increased speeds, in order to stream it optimally. Whereas on mobile, you only need about a download speed of about 3 megabits a second, which, I mean, I think even 3G is capable of that. So it's not a bad idea. It looks quite interesting. And I'm really curious to see how many folk, will kind of cash in on this, especially if they've got this freemium model. I mean, what do you think, Gim? Does that sound interesting? Like, okay, I know you've got, obviously the desktop PC and whatnot, but the ability to play like something brand new at all the highest graphical settings, using this type of system, especially one that's free, albeit you have to suffer some ads to get credits. Is that something that sounds appealing, or what do you think?
Again, it all depends on the earning of the credits, and because the free here is limited to 600 Sky credits per month, so that's, and then on the lowest performance package, which is 60 credits per hour, that's 10 hours a month. I play a lot more than that.
True.
So
True.
The ad supported would not really cover it, but no, a month could pick the higher service. It says 2400 plus. I don't know if that means you can choose to earn more, or you just happen to be given more.
Yeah, I wonder. I think it must be. Yeah, I think what it's saying is that they probably give you the 2400, and then you can earn more if you wish, I believe. Possibly. It's the only thing I can think of. Because it's just interesting, like you say, the language there. The free says earn up to, and then the other two plans are saying, okay, like you say, 720 plus or 2400 plus, and then it says earning Sky credits optional. So I don't know if you're still limited to how much you can earn with those plans.
There's a little bit extra text on the pricing plans. It's the free plan ad supported, yeah, but all ads are optional. Makes it sound like, yeah, you can choose to watch extra ads to get more if you're on the paid plan. So it looks like that's how it'll work, but again, having used ads to get premium currencies for other games like Smite,
I suppose the thing...
I go for a whole thing and get 2 gems, which gets you nothing. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose on one hand, right, if we look at the free model, and okay, yeah, it's only 10 hours of gameplay, but of course we're talking about accessing a library of games. We're not talking about having to own the game yourself, are we? So effectively, in my mind, it almost looks like a reasonable way to try games out for free on, this is, they don't go into the details of that, but it just goes how you can access a digital computer remotely, and you can play games through Origin, Steam, Blizzard, or any service typically found on PC. But the thing that it doesn't say is it your own account? You know what I mean? Like, if it's a case of being limited to what you have in your Steam library, even so, obviously you're playing on a remote PC, then okay, maybe this is a bit kind of, I'm not sure about it. But if on the other hand, you can actually browse, like say they've got a LiquidSky Steam account or something, and you can go to the library and go, oh yeah, hey look, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, oh I fancy playing that. Then maybe the freemium model might not be so bad if it's basically allowing you to test drive 10 hours of games that you don't actually own. That's what I'm interested in, because they don't really go into that detail.
You see, if it's just your own games, and I don't really see much of a point to it, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's only if you don't have, the hardware. I mean, it's like, just imagine there we go, you've got, the only computer you have is a laptop. Maybe you're in between computers and it sucks, you really, really want to be able to play Grand Theft Auto 5 with your buddies, but there's no way your laptop is even going to manage playing it on low. Then okay, maybe cool. Or even what about, say you do have a monster PC, but you're going traveling or you're going on holiday, and then with this kind of service, you could just take your laptop or possibly even your tablet with you, and then still be able to play, like World of Warcraft or whatever, whilst you're on a holiday.
Those laptops can play World of Warcraft.
True.
But no, that I didn't think of that. That would be a good use for it. Personally, I don't do much traveling, so.
Well, anyway, we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, keep an eye on that, definitely.
See how that goes, because I mean, I remember when the Nvidia, the GeForce Now or GeForce Go or whatever it was called, was announced, and it's cool, that's quite neat, really, really cool for especially folk that can't afford, well, hell, like myself, we can't afford a Titan XP, even a 1080 Ti. I mean, they're really expensive pieces of kit, and the ability to be able to play games, to get that experience remotely is quite interesting. But of course, the downside with the GeForce one was it's a subscription service, so you're still talking about a cost effectively to rent a remote machine type of thing. And yes, the experience is good, but it's still not going to be the same as actually sitting in front of the hardware yourself. But oh well, watch this space. Right, speaking of watching spaces, or well, better, not really spaces, but watching yourself, my next bit of news is actually from our website, scholarlygamers.com, and this article was written by Kinakai, and it's entitled Health Pack, Stretches or Stretchers. I don't want to spoil it. If anything, look, visit the site, www.scholarlygamers.com. There you can keep up to date with all our latest articles, and certain articles that are featured, and obviously news of our giveaways and whatnot. But this article is really, really good. And basically, it's getting into posture when it comes to gaming. Because we all know, right, you find yourself in a game, you're totally immersed, minutes turn into hours, turn into, most of the day, and it's really easy, once you've lost track of time, you're not necessarily sitting correctly. Because, I mean, let's be honest, like, if you're at school, if you're at work, we all know ergonomics, right? We know the proper way to sit at a desk, where you want to keep your feet flat on the ground, you want to try to have your arms kind of parallel as well, and, you're sitting upright, you're supporting your back. Whereas gamers, we end up doing this, I don't know, what is it? It's like this chicken neck or chicken roosting type of motion where we lean in like this, right? And we've got our hands on the keyboard and the mouse, and we bring our head up, and we're just at this really kind of weird, awkward angle like that. At least PC gamers. If you're in console, then there's a good chance you'll be sitting on the couch, and maybe you can be a bit more comfortable. But the article basically looks into that, just saying that, look, you might be too distracted to realize the damage before it's too late. If you don't worry about your posture, especially over a long period of time, you're going to be suffering from shoulder pain, neck pain, wrist problems, lower back, And so in the article, she actually interviewed a registered massage therapist who's a gamer himself, and he just stresses the importance of stretching to gamers. So he talked about, some of the things that he's done with his clients and whatnot, and talks about the consequences, and it's a really, really interesting article, so definitely worth a look. I mean, I know myself, I don't think it's necessarily from gaming, but just being, in a computer chair, not necessarily here, but, like at work and stuff, and it's so easy to not sit correctly, or same if you're typing, if you start to hunch over. So, I mean, I know firsthand how easy it is to hurt yourself. I mean, what about yourself, Gim? Have you ever had any kind of back, neck, shoulder pain that you could possibly attribute to your gaming posture?
Well, pain's being made worse by my gaming posture, but nothing caused by it particularly.
Right, that's fair enough. I think
always up and moving about, really.
That's a good point there.
Telling the dog to stop barking, or
yeah,
all that sort of stuff.
I think you raise a good point there with how, yeah, if anything, maybe there's folk out there that's not necessarily the gaming posture that's causing it, but it can absolutely play an aggravating factor to any other type of injuries you might have sustained in the past or something. But so it's a really good read, and it's something that I think that more gamers need to be conscious of. Is if you're spending a long period of time sitting down, it's not good for anyone. I mean, it's like even airplanes. There's a reason they sell these, what are they even called? Those weird kind of tights you can wear for your legs to try to, you know what I'm talking about, Gim? The to help your circulation, because like sitting on an airplane completely stationary for an extended period of time, like we're talking like these transcontinental flights,
the long haul flights.
Yeah, the long hauls, you can end up developing blood clots in your leg and whatnot, and I think gamers don't realize that, look, you could quite likely be doing the same thing. You could be sitting in your chair for hours upon hours without ever moving, and you need to do that. I mean, heck, yourself, whenever we're playing, we take breaks quite often. If I'm streaming, I mean, it's at least on the hour every hour. I will just take a break, get up, stretch my legs, go through, get a tea, get a coffee or something. It's not just about the creature comforts, but also just getting that movement, because it's not good for anyone just sitting in one place for too long. So definitely worth a look. Right, this next story is something that, I'll be completely honest, I had never heard of this. I'd never heard of this game. It wasn't on my radar. And this article's from PC Gamer, and it's about Escape from Tarkov. And it says, Escape from Tarkov wants to be PC gaming's most hardcore FPS. The TLDR version is DayZ on steroids, right? That's what they're saying. Basically, it's... I mean, if we talk briefly about the survival genre, right? The survival genre exploded in 2012, right? DayZ was started off as an Arma 2 mod, and then, since then there's been so many other things. One of the, I suppose, downsides of a lot of these games has been they've been based on older engines, right? So they're, they're a bit dated and whatnot. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds isn't. That's a relatively new, a new engine. It does look really nice. But this Tarkov that's coming out, or well, in development, according to PC Gamer, is absolutely glorious. It's silky smooth, really detailed. The type, the lighting effects, rays of sunshine, all that good stuff that we love. Dense vegetation. And one of the big things that I think has actually piqued my interest, because Gim, I'm really not into that type of game. I've tried a little bit, and I just, between the griefing that folk give you, the occasional abuse you get from the proximity chat, it's just not a game style I really enjoy. I'd love to be playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, but I can watch it, but I don't necessarily enjoy playing it. Whereas looking at Tarkov, they're saying that, look, instead of having a single map like DayZ, Tarkov is actually divided into neighborhoods, and it gives the game, the way they're describing it, their words, not mine, is an MMORPG endgame raid structure, right? You drop into a section of the ruined city, and you make your way from the starting point to the extraction point somewhere in the heart of the map. These neighborhoods are sprawling open, they're full of all sorts of other players trying to make it out, with more gear than what they started with, so, no surprise there, right? Oh, that's what all these survival genre games do. So abandoned buildings, your usual kind of equipment and stuff. And it's quite interesting, right? So there's no quests or anything, and the longer you spend looting, obviously you're at a higher risk of getting, gibbed by someone. But this is where it kind of gets a bit interesting, is that if you extract, then basically you take your loot out and into what they're calling the metagame, where you can gear up, you can modify your guns, whereas if you get killed, though, you lose everything. So this is what has got my attention, is that what they're doing is, they're kind of adding upon the current survival genre, because if you think about most of these games, I mean, yeah, you can build up your rank and your level and whatnot, but with most of them, it's every game's the same, right? You start off with nothing, whereas this new model that they're doing, it almost ends up making it like a gamble, right? So imagine this. You just start the game, you've got nothing, you log in, you do your things, and then you manage to get a decent helmet, a backpack, maybe some weapons, and you extract. So now the next time you play, you could take that stuff with you. So it might give you an upper hand initially. It might, really put you ahead of the game, so to speak. But if you die, you lose it. So I think this is where this game's going to get a lot of interest. It's almost like every time you're gambling, right? What do you have to kind of balance up? What do I need to survive versus how much am I willing to lose? And that has actually got me interested, compared to these other survival games that I've just never really got into. I mean, what do you think, Gim? Is that... I don't know of any games in that genre that currently do that, or am I wrong?
I don't know the genre that well, but nothing's ringing a bell.
No. I mean, I know you can get in Infestation, the new Z, yeah, you can purchase items and whatnot, but they have a different model anyway. If you die, you have like a respawn timer on your character's like 2 minutes or something, unless you have premium, and then you can insta revive. So like, any I think of the items you buy stay with you forever. So it's similar, but at the same time nothing like this. I mean, this whole concept of gambling effectively, so it just, I don't know, it sounds quite exciting. I'm looking at some of the gameplay footage as well, and yeah, it does look very, very nice. It's quite interesting with the environments, saying that that is very, very tactical. It's not just, run around, kill what you can type of thing. You have to, every decision, every firefight, you have to think about, right, where was that coming from? Who is it? Who should I engage? Should I not? Should I just try to survive? It's saying that even turning in place while crouched, so if you're just kind of swiveling around, makes a scrunching kind of scrape noise that other people could hear if they're close enough. So the way they're describing the mechanics sounds really, really amazing. And the way the reviewer here from PC Gamer said, he's like, look, that basically it's a shooter that feels good to play. And he kind of clarifies, said, well, it feels good, and that it makes me feel damn terrible all the time. At every kind of split second that he was playing, at every moment, playing Escape from Tarkov as a terror. You know, that his heart was racing, and he doesn't mean that, you know, as a critique. If anything, it's a compliment. So yeah, it sounds quite interesting. The only thing I can see the downside is how long these, they're calling them raids, last. If you've have you watched much of like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds or anything, Gim?
I've watched a few videos on it.
Right, so I mean,
Streams.
you'll be somewhat familiar then with how long these matches go. I mean, you know, even if you're like in the top 5, top 10, you know, if you make it through
Half hour.
yeah, half hour.
Most.
Whereas Escape from Tarkov, these raids are between 90 to 120 minutes. So an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's no, that's a huge difference between, like you're saying, the 30 minutes or even less, you know, if you die, commitment you would spend in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So no, quite interesting. I don't know, I'm assuming it's just an alpha, I believe it's still... Yes.
Articles and talking a lot about issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just an alpha.
It'll be early alpha.
So I don't think there's any mention of when it can be expected. I think it's that early. So who knows? Maybe
it's probably going to release like most of the games in this genre and be early access for a very long time. I've never seen to finish them.
Permanent early access. Right. Okay, here. Next. This will be something close to your heart. You know, horrible admittance here, but you know, as much as I want to play them, I just haven't played enough, you know, of the Dark Souls games. I'd really like to. I do have one kicking about. I should probably try to play at some point, but I watch a lot of Dark Souls gameplay. There's some amazing streamers out there that I just love watching them play Dark Souls 3. Even our own Kronos, which I do this real quick. Excuse me. Is that? Oh, did I disable that? Okay, I must have disabled that plugin. That's fine. Well, it's a thought that counts. Kronos, he's quite good at Dark Souls. I've seen a lot of good players, but man, the way he dodges is just it's unreal. But anyway, this next piece of news is again from PC Gamer, and it was about the new Dark Souls 3 speedrun world record. And I liked it because the title basically appealed to me with, you know, the world record makes you realize you will never get good. And to put this in a context, if you've never played any of the Dark Souls games, you know, then okay, it's going to be difficult to explain. But if you know of them, and maybe you've played them yourself, you know that these games are difficult, right? They're hard. That's like the cult classic nature of them. That's what when people think Dark Souls, they think, holy shit, it's a hard game. There's plenty of folk out there that rage quit these things, that have never finished. I mean, one of my nephews even, I'm sure he got Dark Souls 3 and it just frustrated him so much. I don't think he actually finished it. Even so, he'd finished the other ones. But anyway,
it does require a lot of patience.
Yeah, well, even when you get into like specialty builds as well, and there's so many different ways to approach them, I suppose. But anyway, look, these games take a while, right? The guy that wrote the article here was saying that, look, you know, his first run of Dark Souls 3 took over 40 hours. Then the DLCs, Ashes of Arundel, took about another 4, and then the Ringed City in about another 8, right? This current world record, it was just broken, right? Speedrun for Dark Souls 3, and that includes all the bosses and both of the DLC, was 1 hour, 24 minutes, and 19 seconds. I mean, holy shit. That's impressive. I mean, what? Okay, I'm not as, you know, involved with the Dark Souls games. I watch them, but you know, I've never really played them. I mean, how difficult is that game to speedrun one of these games?
Oh, I can't speak for Dark Souls 3 because I haven't still got around to playing that yet. But yeah, I tried using some of the speed. Just didn't try a speed run, but I tried using some of the methods they use for certain things, and it didn't work out too well. It's just, yeah, speed run in Dark Souls usually means you're not wearing any armor and you're rolling around, breaking the game pretty much. I remember there's the weird things speed run these games, like in the first one. There was this zone that was all lava, and you had to kill a boss to drain the lava to get to the next zone. Except if you wanted to speedrun it, you would just tank yourself up on healing items and just run across this edge that you're not meant to be able to run across. And occasionally take a little bit of fire damage while running and rolling. And it was... some of the stuff you have to do to speedrun these games is outright just breaking it. But yeah, this is beyond impressive. 1 hour and 24 minutes. I think that's how long it would take me to do the first boss.
Well, I know, it's amazing. This speedrunner, his name was Distortion 2, and basically he broke the world record by 2 minutes. The guy before him, Nems38, had a time of about 1 hour 26. And it's quite interesting just reading through this. The actual speedrunner himself, Distortion 2, kept describing, or not kept, but about halfway through his run, he was just kind of shaking his head going, this run is so fucked, this run is so fucked. Allegedly, he could have saved another minute or so if he hadn't had such a rough time with the Wyvern and the Half-Light bosses, whatever those mean. I'm not familiar with them. So it's just quite interesting that, even so that's so amazing, the guy himself felt that he could have done better than that. So, wow. We'll have to... Quite interesting. Although the author here says that, look, yes, obviously it requires a refined skill set, but a lot of it is also left up to luck and running around nearly nude.
Armor just slows you down.
That makes sense. At first I was like, wait, what? And I was like, oh, of course, because it'll have to do with how much your load is or whatever, right? How much you're carrying.
Don't need armor if you're that good. You don't get hit.
Mm-hmm. That makes complete sense.
You can abuse invincibility frames in your role, like a good Dark Souls player. There's a reason I wear heavy armor and sit behind a shield. I'm not that good. And hopefully with the, I think they're calling it the Game of the Year edition that's coming out soon.
Yes, and it's going to have... I'm thinking along the same lines. Hopefully I'll have to see. I'll obviously wait till it's discounted a bit, but we shall have to see. Right, well, hey, next up is a bit of a tech news. Now, over the last few weeks, we've talked about CPUs and stuff occasionally, right? Especially AMD's Ryzen chips. The offerings that they came out with have been really quite amazing. Yes, you can get into the debate of what's better for gaming, Intel or the new Ryzens, and the answer's not clear cut. You have to keep in mind that your typical gaming i7s these days, they're amazing, and for gaming they probably are the better option. But the top of the line i7s, again, the desktop ones, right? Like your 6700, well now your 77 and whatnot. They're quad cores with 8 effective cores, whereas the new Ryzen is an 8-core chip with 16 effective. So while that doesn't necessarily translate into a big deal for gaming, it does when it comes into things like streaming, recording, video editing, right? More processors, more cores is a huge deal. And so that's where Ryzen can start to jump ahead of the i7. A lot of folk mistakenly compare the new Ryzen chips to your typical i7, whereas in all reality, the fairer comparison is to the i7. I believe it's the 6900K, and that's the one that's the 8 core, I believe, 8 core, 16 thread. or is it less or more? Hold on. I hate this. There's so many nomenclatures that I just end up losing track of what they are. Yes, the i7 6900K is an 8-core processor, but with hyper-threading, so it's 16 equivalent. So that is what the new Ryzen chip, the top-of-the-line Ryzen, is on comparison with that. And the reason that's relevant is because of pricing, right? Because that 6900K from Intel, get this, it's over £1,000 just for that processor. Whereas,
I love it.
yeah, heavy. Whereas the AMD Ryzen, I think's maybe 5. Could double check real quick. AMD. So let's see what the current pricing is. Current pricing of a 1700. No, I want the 1700X. Right, 1700X is 341 quid. What about the damn?
I'll have 12 of those then.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why it's a big deal, because that's a huge difference. When you're looking at a very little difference in performance, yeah, one costs over 1,000, the other one's 300 quid. I know what one I'd be looking at. But so anyway, right, so this has made a big difference for Intel when it comes to, you know, a different type of consumer. Because that 6900K, £1,000 processor, gamers aren't going to buy that, right? We're going to buy, you know, a new Kaby Lake, the 7th gen i7s, because they're better for gaming. But in the industry, you know, like businesses and whatnot, these... and well, depending on your profession, these higher cores are a big deal. So those that are in the know and, you know, deal with servers and whatnot, are no strangers to the Xeon line of Intel processors. Now the Xeon line has always been the kind of, you know, the business line of processors, right? These are the CPUs that have a whole bunch of cores, can address huge amounts of memory, because they're really made for servers or, you know, the type of machines that are doing constant calculation, right? Think server farms, you know, those types of things. Probably LiquidSky, what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, they'll be using these types of chips, I would think, for some of maybe like their infrastructure. Maybe not necessarily a gaming PC, but, you know, a lot of the kind of behind the scenes processes that makes everything work. So this is the bit of the news that hasn't really been in the limelight, is that, you know, on that side of things, Intel has actually had to push things up a bit, you know, because their Xeon line of CPUs has been an older technology. I think currently they were still on Broadwell, which Broadwell was I want to say the 5th generation of i7 processors. And obviously, you know, there was Broadwell, well, there was Haswell, then there was Broadwell, then there was Skylake, and now there's Kaby Lake, right? So they're a couple of generations behind. So there's a lot of talk about the new Ryzen chips are going to be making Intel kind of up the ante, so to speak, up the ante, you know, really, really quickly. And so sure enough, this news is from WCCF Tech. Great website, by the way. They always have some killer news. It's quite ahead of its time. Usually one of the first places to get the info. These new CPUs that are coming are the Xeon Platinum and Gold series, right? And these processors will have up to 28 cores, hyper-threaded, so that means 56 threads. Holy shit. Right, what does that mean? For gamers, not much, right? Most home users don't use Xeon processors, but there is a lot of folk out there that have actually been using them in sneaky ways. You can, for instance, get a Xeon, I don't remember the exact model, and this is years back, but you could get a Xeon processor that was the exact same spec as the consumer i7, but actually it ran better. The problem with Xeons is, though, they use a different socket. So, you know how, like nowadays, Gim, right, all these flashy motherboards have gamer in the title, and they've got like RGB color effects and all that type of shit, right? Because that's what we need as gamers. Whereas the Xeon motherboards, they don't have that, right? They don't have all that flashy stuff. Hence why your average gamer doesn't even look at these things. But the performance in Xeon products is, quite amazing. And I've seen a lot of folk, like Overclockers, the forums, where people are using Xeon chips for like their streaming, their video editing, and the difference is huge. The biggest thing that's interesting is when it comes to RAM, when it comes to memory, right? If you're lucky enough to have one of those new i7s, there's a good chance you're on what they call quad channel DDR4, right? I'm not that fortunate. I'm on dual channel DDR3, and if you're familiar with what that means, with dual channel, you have to have, your RAM has to be in pairs, right? That's how it's matched in pairs, because it's basically, a dual channel, right? So you can't have 3 sticks. You're going to have 2, 4, depending on how many memory slots you've got. With Broadwell, you could get quad channel DDR4, right? So now, a lot of folk who have Skylake and Kaby Lake, they actually have quad channel DDR4, right? So DDR4 is already faster, with more bandwidth. But quad channel means, as you can imagine, you have to have 4 sticks of RAM, and they're sharing it, there's this quad channel setup, so that's even more bandwidth. So that's really quite new, quite exciting. Not a huge difference for us gamers, but again, for folk that are doing video editing, using specialist software, it's a huge deal. Well, these new Platinum Xeons are going to have hex channel, which I don't think I even need to explain. You can imagine hex means 6, right? So it's unreal. The type of, we're talking about the bandwidth that hex channel RAM gives you is, oh god, what is it? Something like, how many gigs a second is that? 10.4 gigaterabytes or so. Oh, it's just ridiculous, right? The CPU has 48 lanes. If you're familiar with your graphics cards, usually a graphics card, a PCI Express one takes up 16 lanes. That's the limitation, so a lot of CPUs will maybe have 20 or 30 or something. They're going to have 48 lanes per CPU. It's really, really amazing stuff. Again, us home users, it doesn't make a big deal, but for the server world, the business world, it's huge. I mean, these motherboards are going to have 12 RAM slots, so that way, it's the geek in me just drools at this. The thought of a CPU with 28 cores. I mean, for streaming and video editing, that would just be amazing. But unfortunately, the price will probably be astronomical as well. Just,
Yeah, good, prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean, but on the plus side, Xeons, they do tend to go down in price whenever they're superseded by newer ones. Because again, they're not huge sellers, because they're not technically consumer chips. So what a lot of the tech savvy, like the hardcore folk, right? The guys that overclock all the time and tweak to their heart's content, a lot of them tap into the Xeon market, and I've seen some quite interesting results from them, especially over like the overclockers.co.uk forums, where people are showing, hey, look, I got my Xeon to run just as well as your i7, whatever. So no, quite neat. Not gaming pertinent, but it's just interesting because, again, is that a response to the Ryzen chips? The Ryzen chips haven't been like the ultimate gaming chip, but there's a lot of these types of programs where actually it's looking like a very cost-effective alternative to the that 6900K I was talking about, that that specialist CPU that, again, most gamers don't get. It's really only the the content creators. So the fact that you can buy an AMD chip for a third of the price of that, well, less than a third, just makes me wonder if this push with the new Xeons is a bit reactive, saying, "Oh no, look, Intel's trying to flex its muscle," saying, "No, no, no, hey, look, instead of trying to buy, a cheap alternative, look, this is actually, these are specialist CPUs here. You need to come back over to the blue side of the tracks." I don't know. Right, one more story. This is from Trusted Reviews, and this is actually EU specific. Right now, I'm sure most people out there have heard of Kodi, right? Kodi. These Kodi boxes. I mean, I get questions all the time from friends and family who know very little about tech, but they'll always ask, "Oh, hey, what's up with Kodi? Should I get a Kodi box? Should I do this? Should I do that?" If you're not familiar with Kodi, basically, they're based on the home theater PCs. Years ago, Microsoft had developed what was it called? Was it Windows Media? I can't remember. It was a special version of Windows that was basically you would enable it, and if you've seen, how Steam has the big picture mode you can do. It was basically the Windows version of that. And I believe it launched with Vista, but you could actually buy these smaller PCs, the home entertainment ones, and they didn't have Vista on them. It was actually a special version of Windows called Windows Media Edition or some crap like that. But anyway, that flunked and it died. And what was born out of it was this XMBC, Xbox Media Center kind of platform. And that's what's on a Kodi box, right? A Kodi box is basically, a little Android TV box that you can install apps, you can do whatever, just like any other Android device. But the big problem with these is that, I don't want to use the word most, but a lot of people install software on Kodi boxes that enables them to watch movies, like movies that are in the cinema. They're not available yet, and they're watching them for free. The ability to watch premiere, like over here in the UK, football matches, which anyone who knows anything about football, I mean, I don't, but I know that you have to pay, right? You have to subscribe to Sky or BT Sports or whoever in order to access those things. But with a Kodi box, you can watch these things without paying. So that's why, me personally, we've never had a Kodi box in the house. There's been questions by family members, "Oh, hey, should we look into one?" And I just always look and say, "No, it's not legal. It's not legal." And so sure enough, the EU has finally weighed in. They've issued a damning verdict in fully loaded set-top boxes. Okay, now this is where we need to clarify. There's nothing wrong with Kodi, right? The way that it ships, right? The way Kodi boxes are shipped usually is just as an Android TV box, and that way you can put your apps on it, your Twitch stuff, your Netflix, your Amazon. That's absolutely fine. But in the kind of not even the grey market, like on actual Amazon, you can buy fully loaded Android TV boxes, and these things have all of the, they're called fully loaded, and they've got ways to watch films, way to watch sports. So basically the EU, when I say EU, it's the European Court of Justice, right? And this just happened yesterday. They've basically effectively banned the sale of fully loaded Kodi boxes. Now, of course, the way laws work over here, even so the EU's the European Court of Justice has ruled that way. Countries within the EU don't necessarily have to do it, but if they don't, they're going to get their wrists slapped. Of course, we're kind of in the middle of Brexit, so I don't know how it'll affect us in the UK. What about down in your neck of the woods, Gim? Have you had much experience or heard much about Kodi boxes down there?
They're everywhere.
Yeah, I figured that.
I mean, we got Virgin Media a minute. They charge so much stupid amounts of money, and you don't really get anything in return. And we've got a TiVo box with them, and it's crap because it just slow as and it's like playing with like a 20-year-old laptop. It is so bad, and they charge you so much, and that's without getting all the sports stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting. Like I said, I know of a lot of people that have them, and I've just always kind of steered clear. It's nothing to do with paranoia. It's just that I just didn't feel comfortable with it. You know, I mean, I can admit when I've lived in other countries, like especially in Southeast Asia, copyright law over there was so strange. You know, they didn't recognize international copyright law, so you would go into actual stores. If you went into a store and bought, at that time, it would have been a PlayStation 2. You got sold a PlayStation 2 that was modded and had 10 games of your choosing pre-installed. Right? That's the way it worked over there. I remember spending, God, a good few days trying to buy... I'd built a PC over there, but I'd actually got a shop to make it for me. I chose all the parts, they put it together. And it came with Windows XP. It was only after owning it for about 6 months that I found out that the Windows XP it had on it wasn't legit. And so I went into the store saying, look, I'd like to buy. They're like, oh, no, you don't need to buy. Here's a disc. I'm like, no, I really actually need to buy. You know, I need trying to buy a legit one. And I was sent all over Seoul, just all over the place, where people were just looking at me funny. They didn't quite understand why would I pay money for Windows when they could just, you know, give me a CD with it on it. It was a different world. Whereas over here, I just avoid all that. You know, I stream music. I don't torrent it. I don't download it. Same with films. I'll wait till something's available to rent on Now TV or, you know, Blinkbox or whatever, or even, you know, Netflix and Amazon. I do all that stuff, but I don't go out there and try to watch or source things and that kind of grey shadiness. And I think that's what always put me off about a Kodi box. Because at the end of the day, it's still an internet device. It still has an IP address. It still has a MAC address. And unless you're using masking software, you know, or setting up a VPN, you know, it can come back to you.
Currently using it isn't actually technically illegal because it's streaming and you're not actually getting a copy of it on the box. So they're just making the setting up the boxes illegal, like preloaded, but using it is.
So it'll be interesting to see how that affects folk over here. If anyone will really care, if it means people are going to start throwing away their Kodi boxes, or if they'll just be like, it's fine. You know, I own one. So, because I don't know if they actually made a comment on whether there's a grandfather clause or something. You know, I don't think they did. I think they just said that no, we're banning them being sold from here onwards. No, it's quite interesting. I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk lately here in Britain about Kodi boxes, about their legality, and a little bit of kind of unsureness, or, you know, they just didn't know really how to proceed. You know, because I don't think you're going to have the police showing up at your door, you know, boom, 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 boom. Gimboid, we know you're in there. We know you've been watching Game of Thrones illegally. Come out with your hands up.
The real problem isn't the Kodi stuff, it's the fact that if you want it legit, they make you pay far too much.
Well,
it is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, some of the subscription services over here are just amazing. The prices.
You get your decent, like Netflix and Now TV, they're all decently priced. But if you want to subscribe to satellite or cable TV, then forget about it. It's stupid.
Unreal.
I mean, if you sign up, it's great for a year, and then they just pile all the extra money on, and then you keep switching to get a lower price, but it's just far too much hassle then. So, yeah.
Now it'll be interesting to see. You know, whereas I like the idea of all the other things, like the cool little things they've got, the Fire TV sticks and the even the Chrome and the Now TV box. I think those are all quite cool. It's just some of these, the Kodi ones, are just, I don't know. Just like I say, we've had a lot of discussion at home. I mean, my stepdaughter says, "Oh, why can't we get a Kodi box?" Because obviously at school, the kids, they're all talking about it, right? All the teenagers, they talk about how they're watching this and they're watching it on Kodi and trying to explain, that look, actually, that's kind of not cool, to teenagers. It's fun to say the least. Oh well. Well, that is us at about an hour. We've went through all of our news discussions for this evening. It was just me and Gim again. We've got to look. I'll bring it up one last time. We've got to do this. Where are we hiding? Just one more time for you know who. You know who you are. For a last minute hashtag letdown. But no, hey Gim, appreciate you coming on this evening, having a bit of a chat with me.
Yes.
About these things, and for those of you out there who are watching this on demand, thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, all the usual stuff applies, right? If you like, hit that like button. If you dislike, you know what to do. If you haven't subbed to the channel yet, hey, what you waiting for? It's free. And make sure to check out www.scholarlygamers.com. You can even just search for hashtag #ScholarlyGamers on all of our social media platforms, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Twitter. I don't know if there's stuff on the gram or not, but just on the internet in general. And you will find something somewhere, because there's plenty of folk in the Scholarly Gamers crew. But hey, that is it for this week's Jungle Drums. We will see you again next week on Thursday, 9 p.m. UK time, live here on Beam. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you later.